Hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Riley. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the producer and the director of The Lost Factory. I am so appreciative of all of you for coming here tonight. This means so much to me and so much to Hugo. I want to thank Burlington Beer Company for graciously providing the space for us. It's absolutely beautiful. Yes, round of applause for Burlington Beer. And I would also like to thank CCTV, who is here filming the event live for us tonight. So, I have always wanted to be a filmmaker. From the time I was probably 10 years old, I was running around the yard filming movies with my brother on my little camcorder. I eventually went to Essex High School, which has an incredible film program where I was able to make my first documentary. I then went to film school, and I was surrounded by cinema every single day. Oh. 2 years ago, I stumbled upon an article that said, "Local engineer exposes the mystery of the Lumière Brothers building." I was absolutely captivated to know that the Lumière Brothers, who are often credited as the inventors of cinema and the inventors of color photography, the autochrome process, made their mark here in the United States, exactly where we're standing today. It's just absolutely insane. I reached out to Hugo earlier this year to tell him how inspired I was by his story and his 30 years of dedicated research that have gone into uncovering the history of this building. I also told him that I wanted to make a documentary, and he graciously agreed to go on this crazy journey with me to make this film. With this film, my goal is to let everyone know that the autochrome process in the Americas was invented here in Burlington, Vermont. I feel very passionately about the history that was here, and I can't wait to share it with the world. This is going to be on Vermont Public. It'll be broadcasted there. We are also entering into a bunch of film festivals around the state and some national and international renowned festivals such as Sundance, Cannes, and Tribeca. As I've learned more about this building, I have become so increasingly excited, and this story now means so much to me, and we have so much left to discover. Hugo is uncovering new pieces about this building every single day, and to be able to explore that in this documentary in real time, I'm just looking forward to it. We're shooting in October, and we both can't wait. I am in awe of Hugo's drive and his perseverance. He is the reason that we are all here tonight. So I would love to give a warm welcome for environmental engineer and the man who discovered the last standing Lumière Brothers building in the whole entire world, Hugo Martínez Cazón.
Well, thank you very much, and it's very moving for me because you are being very, very generous to me in coming here to hear the story. I think it's amazing that Riley wants to do this film, and it's amazing that you want to help us get it there, because this is an incredible journey and a real worthwhile story to tell. So let's all be part of it, and I'll share with you whatever I know. There's only so much time that I can talk tonight, but you're always welcome to ask, and I'll be happy to give you the best answer I can, or dig into it and see if I can get you more details. So, I'm going to wait till Gail moves this. But this is where color started. Okay, so if I say to you, and I don't know you, and I say World War I, you probably have an image in black and white in your head. And none of us were around in World War I, but we have this image. So I'm going to try to show you that there's more to that story, okay? I think I'm just gonna, you guys tell me if this is obnoxious, but I'm just gonna do this way. All right, so. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, let's do it. All right, here we go. So in 2019, I went to Lyon, and what you see here is a plaque at the garden behind the Lyon Lumière Institute Museum. And you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, all right, sorry. So thanks for letting me know. If I wander off, please remind me. And then down at the bottom, you're gonna see a piece of Lumière film from the 1940s, 1950s. So we're gonna go through all that era. By the 1890s, Antoine Lumière had one of the most renowned black and white photographic dry plates factories and products in the world. And the Lyon home of the Lumières became the hub for the factories that ensued from all the inventions that they made. So they went on to become famous for the invention of cinema, or perfection, I guess, of cinema, because there were many people that were working on that. And they produced images like this, which is the famous workers coming out of the Lumière factory in the early 1900s, late 1890s, this one. So why are we talking about Lyon at all? Lyon was, at the time, very, very famous for a number of other reasons, namely silk. Silk, since the Middle Ages, had been a very important product for Lyon, and so you need to keep that in mind when we talk about this story, because the thing that made the silk in Lyon so sought after was the quality of the dyes that they were using. And that's a whole story for another day. Oh, sorry, I should show you the gadget over here is what sparked the labor movement, because this was the early jacquard loom, and it could replace the work of an artisan loom worker. And so there's a lot of reasons to go to Lyon besides the really excellent food. So I'm an environmental engineer, and I have done work here for over 30 years, and one of the things that I brought to my job was to look at the history of buildings to try to understand what went on there. And one day I was looking through microfilm, which in those days was the only way to look at old documents, and I was reeling through it by hand, and this image went by, and I was new to Vermont, but I knew that French speaking was very prevalent, and this thing went by kind of upside down, and it looked kind of like this. So it just went by, and I was on my way to another page, and this, as it zoomed by, I read Lumière, and I was like, I gotta be at work, but I'm gonna go back to this page. So I went backwards, and this piece of microfilm says, Lumière dry plates for photographic materials, or something like that. And to my mind, I was like, this can't be a coincidence that I know that there's a lot of French speakers in this area, but that somebody would be called Lumière and have a factory in Burlington that makes photographic plates. But I asked around, and nobody had an answer, and nobody knew what I was talking about. So most of the 30 years, that's what that's been about, is like just kind of soldiering on and hoping that I could put something together, but not really knowing if there was a story. So let's see how we get there. By the early 1900s, there were beginning to be newspaper articles where they interviewed a scout that the Lumieres had sent to the United States. So it was right after the 1900 Paris exhibition, and at the 1900 Paris exhibition there was a British journalist, photographer who was deciding who's going to get the golden medal for the exhibition, and his name is Herslet, and he walks in and was just bedazzled and said, well, your factory is 5 times bigger than the biggest factory we have in England. And so the quality was really remarkable. And he asked the person there, do you have somebody in English that I can talk to? And they said, well, our English language representative is on his way to New York, so couldn't. So that was F.J. White. F.J. White was a person that had a company in Great Britain with his brother, E.L. White. So this is a funny part, but it's the 2 brothers in English and the 2 brothers in French making a deal. And the White brothers were going to represent the Lumieres in the United States. Why? Because Louis Lumière, the son of Antoine, had been tinkering with a process called the Lippmann process, and nobody had had success with it, but he was determined to keep at it, and we'll see where we end up with that. But the Whites sent F.J. White to the U.S. He went from New York to Boston, and then back to New York, but then did a tour that took him to Denver and then to Chicago. And if you look at the paperwork of that era, that was one heck of a train trip, right? So he went to all these places to see if there would be a good location for a Lumière factory. He ended up going from Chicago to New York. Was very difficult, so he took the straight route, which was Chicago to Montreal. And in Montreal, I'm gonna make this up, but I feel good about it, because I like butter. And most of you do too. So one of the things is he's in Montreal and he goes to the business clubs to find out, hey, I'm looking to see if I can set up a factory here. What do you need? Well, I don't know. The thing is, at the time, there was a thing called the Dingley Act, which was a very steep importation tax. We like to call them tariffs today. And the Lumieres needed to put a factory here because they were anticipating that they were going to succeed with color, and they were going to need to get into this US market, but the taxes were going to be too high to make it a viable product, okay? So here's F.J. White in Montreal, and he's asking around, and he needs a dye works because he needs people that can make the pigments. But of course, they haven't told him everything, so they just like, I don't know, they need a factory close to a place that has pigments and want to put the factory in the US. So in Montreal, he sees the dye works, Wells Richardson. Wells Richardson was the largest dye factory in the world at the time. And Montreal had a branch office. The branch office agent says, well, you should talk to our president. You're almost there. He says, ooh, okay. Well, you got to go to Burlington. It's like Burlington was a town of 18,000 people. I mean, it's almost a joke that you're in Montreal and you have to go to this village to meet the owner of the Wells Richardson Company. So that's what happened. And in 1901, they announced that they're going to build a building in Burlington, Vermont. Why? Because the Wells and Richardson Company was here, and they had the dye works. And so here he's already saying, when he's interviewed, we plan to build a factory for 100 to 125 or 150 skilled workers, and it was going to be equivalent to a third of the totality of the factory the Lumieres already had in Lyon. So they were going in big, all right? So as soon as the announcement went out, yeah, you probably can't read it from back there, the Lumières were putting out an advertisement in the newspaper already saying, you may have heard that Eastman is going to buy this building that we're making in Burlington, but we want to tell you that none of that's going to happen. All right, Eastman had been working on making a emulsion for photographic material on celluloid. And so there was a lot of competition, but they made it clear this is going to be our building. So there's a little transcript if you want to read that. And let's get that. So then the building was built. Okay, this is before Burlington Beer Company. Okay, so this is where I bought my refrigerator. Okay, when I first came to Vermont. And it was a local store, and I wanted to support the appliance store that was here locally. And you know, it was a cool building, but I didn't know what it was, okay? So I had already seen the microfilm, but the microfilm didn't show you where the building was, or if the building had been knocked down or what. So there was no reason to believe that this was the same as that, okay? So let's continue to be in the 1900s. They built this building, and the building was made so that it would be completely pitch black in here, so that the material wouldn't be exposed to light, okay? They also put a 1,000 foot pipe into the lake, and if you go out to the back to the boiler house, which is over in the parking lot, where the big chimney is, you'll see a chilling tower, or a cooling tower, and they could bring the temperature from outside 90 degrees to 40 degrees in here. Okay, and talking about 1901 technology, okay? So this was a very specific building for a very specific purpose. This is not what you would call a mill building. This was a factory made specifically for this function. So by 1903, they send their staff, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but by 1904, the Lyon factory and the US factory patent autochrome. Okay, so what was it? It was dried potato starch dyed in 3 different colors, and then glommed onto the emulsion, the sticky stuff, on glass. And we're not going to get into the chemistry of it, but it looked like that, okay? The thing that was fun when I was researching this was they didn't have color. So in the patent, they didn't have a color picture because they didn't have color. Okay, so if somebody wanted to talk about the color of somebody's blouse or the garden or whatever, there were 5 pages of description of the color and the shade of the thing. Okay, so in the original patent, this is in black and white. So that's 1903, 1904, they patented. By 1905, I'm sorry, I'm skipping one thing. In 1903, something really important happened that makes me sure of what I'm saying right now. In 1903, the building was built, the workers were being hired, and the Lumière Brothers decided, we're going to buy out the contract, and we're just going to run the factory ourselves. Send a manager, and we'll just run it ourselves. So F.J. White, who had already bought a mansion here on College Street, used to be the Peck Insurance family's house, he had bought that and wanted to stay here. And now all of a sudden all that came to an end, and they had a falling out. He wanted the future payments of his salary, and they said, no, we already bought out the contract, so no go. And he did a thing that happens a lot in Vermont, or used to happen a lot more. He just walked away and said, well, if I'm not employed with you, I don't need to do anything. So the pipes froze, and the building was damaged. There was water damage everywhere. And so in 1903, they did an inventory of the factory, and they started repairing it, and they sent their A-team. They sent people we're going to talk about in a minute, and they reinstated the building, fixed all the machines, brought the chemicals in, and started anew. So by 1905, the factory is fully operational, and that's about up to 200 skilled workers. So in 1905, when the factory is fully operational, you have this is a statement to the French stockholders that they now own a piece of this building in Burlington, Vermont. So, where does it say? Believe me, okay, it says Burlington, state of Vermont, États-Unis, okay? So, so everybody got a piece of this stock. So, again, that seems, proof enough, but meanwhile, so I transcribed it in case you want to take a shot or you want to read it. And the legal case against F.J. White continued. So until 1907, there was kind of uncertainty about what was going to happen with that. But the new manager, Poulaillon, continued to put the factory together and to work towards the next goal. The next goal was to, okay. So this is to show who Poulaillon was. The manager was a chemical engineer, and there was a lot of debate in those days. So there were all these photographic journals that I read from the early 1900s were like, well, we tried this, we tried that. And there was a lot of debate because people were really on the cusp of changing so much in understanding of the optical nerve and why you saw the color that was in the photograph and what kind of lenses you were using or what kind of chemistry to do the development. So, it was not a mapped future. There was just a lot of inventiveness that went into this, okay? So, so by 1907, in July of 1907, the Lumières have perfected autochrome to the point that you could just take a plaque, because these were little glass plaques, and I'll show you in a minute, and you could drop it into your Kodak Brownie camera and go for a picnic and take pictures in color, all right? So it was that easy. And so in July 1907, the Lumières announced the opening up of this as a product that you could just buy and take pictures, and it was for everybody. So important was it that the main photographers in the art world, like Eichen and Stiglitz, went to Paris to be there when they announced this. Another famous photographer was Montminy, and he was from Quebec City. So they're all there, they have the big event and the reveal of the new product, and Montminy returns to Quebec City and takes a photograph of his wife. And it's the first color photograph taken in the Western Hemisphere of the public product, okay? But Burlington, we'll get to that in a second. Burlington, I'll show you in a second, was ahead of that because we had the factory. So we had the prototypes that were not the commercial product, they were the prototypes of the film. So we're gonna see a picture that looks like it's not in color. But Stiglitz, then, Alfred Stiglitz is the person that kind of made photography acceptable as a piece of art. And so he created a thing called the Little Galleries and had an exhibit in New York to showcase photography as a creative medium. And in November of 1907, Antoine Lumière came to Boston. And it was such a big deal. Okay, from Boston, in Boston he came with some paintings that he had made, because Antoine, the father, was a painter as well. and he set up the painting next to an autochrome of his painting, right? And people were arriving like you just guys did, and this painter, Boston painter, walks in and he's like, what kind of trickery is this? You know? Because it was that big. It was like nobody had ever imagined that this was even going to ever be possible, all right? So Antoine Lumière was a bit of a showman, so then he went to Philadelphia and they had a big dinner. It was such a big deal for the business people and the science community at the time that Antoine Lumière was coming here, that 10 years after he died, they had another banquet in Philadelphia to remember the day when Antoine Lumière came for dinner, all right? So this was really changing the world that people were living in. And Stiglitz, well, so here's some pictures I'm going to show you. I've got like thousands of these that I found over the years. And they're the ads where they would give you a free plaque of material if you chose to get it. But they all say the same thing. Factories in Lyon and Burlington, Vermont. This was the only factory they ever had outside of France. There's another one, and then Stiglitz then finally writes an article in his magazine Camera Works, and I won't go through all the details, but I just want to showcase the article where he says what he felt when he took his first color photograph and how easy it was. Because to this day, when people highlight the work of Stiglitz, you see a lot of pictures in black and white. You don't see pictures in color. And what he says in his own words is, I don't want to take another picture in black and white again. You know, this is amazing. So, and in that same article, they have the advertisement for color photography at last with factories in Burlington, Vermont, and Lyon. So this is the daughter of Poulaillon. This is Martha Poulaillon, the daughter of the manager of this factory. And this is a color picture. Because nobody had any technology to print a color photograph. So they had to describe how wonderful it was to see a color picture, all right? So I dug around and dug around, and I finally, I have not found an original, so that's all I got for that. So I already told you about Philadelphia. So we tend to think of color photography changing the world and saying, well, I took a picture of my puppy or my grandma, you know, that's really cool. But this is not the only thing they were thinking about. Of course, within a year, people were doing competitions to see who took the best Christmas picture. But you also had the entire science community re-gearing, okay? So in 1916, for example, right after somebody had done a field book of wild flowers and wild plants in upstate New York, in the Adirondacks, this other guy, House, what's his first name? Homer House. He got a contract with the state of New York and went up the mountain in the Adirondacks with 300 plates of glass, so you'll see how heavy they are, and just said, oh, I can just go to the top of the mountain and take pictures in the upper reaches of the Adirondacks. So here's the real thing. This picture was taken in 1916. Okay? That meant that if you wanted to be a landscape architect, you could take a picture. I mean, this is a reproduction from a magazine, but you could take a picture of what you were trying to do instead of spending oodles of pages describing it. So how do I know that there were people in Vermont that worked there? And we're not going to look at these, but this is the city directories. So to be able to tell you this story, I had to read through thousands of pages of these, okay, to figure out who was working at the Lumière factory, and that will play, accidentally, a really pivotal role on the second part of this. But at the end of it, I just want you to see what autochrome looks like, okay? These pictures were taken in 1912, okay? And, you know, if you can get closer and closer and closer to the picture, you can see the blood vein, the blood vessels in her arm. And each of the stones in the beach is a stone. It's not a blob. Okay? So the idea that this is 30, 40 years before Kodachrome is insane. It also is a photograph taken before World War I, which is where we started. And you have a black and white image of World War I. But this is the image that people had of World War I. Those soldiers are in Alsace, and this picture over here was from the first National Geographic of 1916 that had color photographs. They ran 15 or 16 plates of autochrome. Okay, so as soon as autochrome was possible, in 1908, the Perkins of UVM fame went to Yellowstone Park and took photographs in autochrome, 73 or 74 autochrome plates of Yellowstone Park. So as soon as those started to get around, they were giving tours throughout Vermont with a string quartet and talking about how you need to preserve the environment in Vermont. So it changed the dialogue about environmental conservation. It also, with pictures like this one, convinced the policymakers when they saw color autochromes of Yellowstone and Mount Zion and Yosemite to say to Maher, who was promoting the idea of National Park Service, it's like, well, this is what it looks like out west, right? So when I went to Lyon in 2019, it was during the Lumière Festival. The Lumière Festival every year commemorates when Louis Lumière was given a golden medal for his life's work. And it's amazing because the entire film industry of Europe shows up, okay? And I got a chance to talk with the person in charge of historic patrimony, which is what they call it in French, historic preservation. And we walked through the museum while we were chit-chatting, and he kept asking me questions to see if I had evidence or proof. And, you know, understandably, because this is a story that's way out there. And we ended up in front of the charrette, and he says, well, this is what the factory would have looked like. Now, we're in the museum, and all these buildings that are here in the charrette were all knocked down in the 1970s because after the war, there was a need for urban renewal, there was a need for housing. All those old buildings from the early 1900s, 1890s were knocked down. So then he said, you have the building. So we have the building. So we need to, I think, understand that this is the only building that stands that you can say we were here and we took a photograph in the building where they had color photograph for the first time. You know, so the invention was made in Lyon, but there were chemists here that were cooperating and collaborating in the research with the workers in Lyon. So when you do go to the Lumière Festival and the Lumière Museum, I hope you do go, this is the picture of Auguste and Louis Lumière, and next to it is the gate that you saw at the beginning. That's what remains of the original building of the workers coming out, okay? And that wall is a new wall, and the other side is a palisade where the museum is. And this is the only autochrome press that is left. Of course, he immediately asked me, have you seen it in the basement? If there's like a machine that looks like this? I was like, they cleaned it out in the 1900s, so I'm sure this was all sold as scrap metal. But But they do have one, and I've seen this one get reused to make an autochrome plate. So let's go on to, we've got to keep moving along. This is what the museum looks like now. But this is one of many that we won't have time to get into. But this is a picture of the Long Trail taken in autochrome in the late 19-teens, maybe 1920. So this, is relevant. It shows Vermont before we changed it. And there's a host of these pictures. So just so you see what it looks like, this is the chemical engineer, Jean Paris. And in the front, you see he's got the different dyes, and it's not a plate of potato chips, but there's potato starch. And he was the author of the Encyclopedia of Photographic Chemistry. So this is post the factory here. The factory here closed in 1912. Why? Because of another set of taxes. The competition was pretty strong, and Eastman had been running a monopoly for a number of products, and the Fair Trade Commission had started to do a case against Eastman, but they were still working on it in 1912. At that point, the Lumière company with Jugla, they combined and they decided we can make the product cheaper in France and just sell it to the US. We've already established the market, and that's what they did. But by 1915, Eastman had a consent decree against him to cease and desist with the monopoly, but we did not have the Lumière factory here anymore by 1915. So if there's time, let's talk about the next thing. So while I did all that, I presented in Montreal. Sorry, I'm not an Apple user. There we go. And the, sorry. There we go. And to do slideshow. How do I start the slideshow? So I went to Montreal to give a presentation about what you just heard, and I was pretty excited. And at the end of it, André Gaudreau is the head of the media history department at the University of Montreal. He and Professor Louis Pelletier were talking, and they said, Hugo's got to meet Clara. And I said, who's that? So they set up a meeting, we talked. She has a PhD on the work of a cameraman called Francis Dublier. So this is Francis Dublier, okay? In the 1890s, when the Lumières invented photography, cinema, they needed cameramen, okay? So they trained 3 young men as cameramen. And the early Lumière camera was, actually it's this thing, it was about 10 pounds. And it was easily movable, and you just had to run around with your tripod. So Francis Dublier is one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer of cinema. And when this story starts, he's 18, okay? The Lumière sent him, when he was 18, to Moscow to film the coronation of Nicholas II in Russia, okay? Just the fact going from Lyon to Moscow when you're 18 on a train is pretty amazing. So he went to film it, and we're gonna get there later. You'll be able to see the film on your cell phone in a minute. So he went with Moisan, the other cameraman that was trained, and they said, we filmed it, and at the end of the coronation, the Tsar said, the banquet is open to everybody. So the peasants that had come to see the event rushed for the food. So thank you for not doing that today. And 5,000 people got crushed to death. So while that's happening, Moison and Dublier panic and figure out what do we do, and they grab the camera and they start filming. So they had the presence of mind to record what's going on. And so obviously everything's chaotic. The Tsar's already left. He's off to the gala to dance in the ballroom. At the same time, the same thing happened that we can predict today. A Cossack showed up and took the camera. So it was like an early version of photojournalism and an early version of oppression and censorship. So it's a pretty telling moment. So Dublier traveled all over Asia and then came back through to Kiev and was in Kiev for a while and filmed a lot of stuff there, projected movies. So he was the Lumieres called him the showman cameraman because he was such a globetrotter. And they were making films that would be reels of news items or factual things. But by 1902, something really important is going to happen, and it has to do with Clara's PhD. When I went to look at her presentation, I came back to her afterwards, we had a Zoom, and I said, well, what happened to his life between when he was 1900 and 1910? And she says, I've spent 10 years of my life looking at his life, and I don't know what happened during those years. So remember those little books that I was looking at. Here's down here, it's called the Burlington City Directory, okay? And I had found Francis Dublier, but I didn't know who Francis Dublier was. So I'd be fibbing if I told you that. So I found out through her who Dublier was, but she didn't know that he had ever lived here because she didn't know there was a factory here. So Dublier was here, and what you see up at the top in white is the Ellis Island record of his arrival in the United States. He gets here and he travels here with Poulaillon and Louis Leroux and their families. And Louis Leroux is a chemist. Poulaillon is an army captain and an engineer chemist. And then this guy Dublier, right? And so when they get to Ellis Island, I've gone through pages and pages and pages of this stuff, and people were maybe bringing $20 of that era with them, and they had to declare where they were going. I'm going to St. Louis, I'm going to San Francisco, I'm staying in New York, and they get to this guy, it's like, well, who are you? It's like, Dublier. It's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm an artist. It's like, great, you know, how much money have you got? It's like, $200. And the average people had $20, okay? So he was a very well-established, very successful artist. And then Louis Leroux is right behind him, and they say, well, what are you? I'm a chemist, a licensed chemist. How much money are you bringing in? $50. So a quarter of what this artist was coming in with. And they say, well, where are you going? He says, I'm going to 168 Pine Street, Burlington, Vermont. So he went to, the house is still there, and it was a boarding house, and then eventually they moved to live in the administrative building, which is now the Switchback Bistro, okay? So this building was outside of the region of downtown Burlington and had been a part of the fairgrounds. But by finding him in the city directory, I could prove that this was the same Francis Dublier that had come in through Ellis Island. So the consequence is pretty clear. Then by the 1910 census, I found out that 2 of his 3 children were born here in Burlington.
So Burlington gave the Dublier a safe place to have a family. And George and Marcel were born here. So by 1915, the factory here had closed in 1912. He decides to stay in the United States. It's a long story I have to skip, but he ended up working at the Solax studio in Fort Lee, New Jersey. That's pivotal because we regard Fort Lee, New Jersey as the beginning of the history of cinema in the US. Which is, yes, for sure. But Dublier was here for 10 years before that. So there's a chapter of that story here. And Dublier then went to New Jersey and worked at Solax. Solax was a studio that was set up by a woman called Alice Guy Blaché. And she was the first woman to make a full-length film, and which she made in France before she came here to set up the studio. But Dublier was sought after because he could set up a studio and a lab and figure out how to get your product to look perfect. So he went on to work at 5 different studios in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And in 1915, when he's interviewed, he remembers fondly the years when he worked for the family, the Lumière family. By 1948, is it? He died, and that's his obit. And they got a couple of the details wrong, but to me that's key because, although it's not part of the slideshow, by then people were already misrepresenting or forgetting who Louis Lumière was. I have a photograph of my laptop of Louis Lumière shaking hands with Disney. And it's 1947, like a year before Louis passes away. It says, well, here's a picture of Disney with one of the workers at the Lumière factory. It's like, he is the factory, you know? And then they forgot, so we're not the only ones that forgot the Lumières. However, in Russia, there's a complete dedication still today to Dublier. And this photograph is from the Russian website in honor of Dublier. So, I hope you'll, if you want, this QR code is to Clara's PhD work. And here's the one to the Seed and Spark for the film, which I hope you'll support, because this is really earth-shattering. I'm still, all these years later, I'm beside myself that we don't know the impact this had on cinema for sure, on photography for sure, but on surgery, on microbiology, on botany, you know, on how to represent news and history and preserve the national environment through the National Park Service. So to end, just, you know, as fun, one day I got a call from Gretchen, who's the manager at Switchback, and says, I don't know who you are and I hope you don't mind, but I got your phone number, can you come over right now? And I said, and it was raining and it was cold, and I said, sure. So they were ripping up the Switchback building to turn it into a bistro. And she had read, like Joe had read about this, she had read about the Lumière building, and she told the carpenters to be careful. So when they ripped up the flooring, this check showed up. And this check is signed by Claudius Poulaillon. I love that his name was Claudius Poulaillon, because, you know, there aren't a lot of other people called Claudius Poulaillon. So I'm pretty sure it was the right one. So thank you very much for being here, and really, really deeply grateful that you're supporting the movie. The documentary really needs to get out, because I think when the people that are filmmakers really catch on, this will be a very exciting new chapter, and I'm very grateful to Riley for making that happen. So thank you all. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So thank you to Burlington Beer Company and Joe and John just reminded me, Chef John, that I have a 1908 autochrome here. So they're very, very rare, and I don't want to put too much light through it because they fade and crack and fall apart. But come and take a look, and here you are in the autochrome factory, and you can come and see an autochrome that's for real. So I'll be over here, and let's give it over to Riley.
Thank you so much, Hugo, for that incredible speech. I'm going to try and pull up our trailer so I can just play it in the background while we are talking about donations. Let's do you mind putting in the tiny bubbles? Alright, if we can get it, we can, but if we can't, it's okay. Alright, anyways, so thank you so much again for everyone for being here tonight. I just want to talk a little bit about the donations and what your money will be going towards. So far, we have raised $630, so thank you guys for making this happen. So our goal tonight is to reach $2,500, which will go towards the production for this film. We are shooting from October 5th to October 8th. Some of the money will be going towards our crew roles, such as our gaffer, our director of photography, our assistant camera. We have an on-set sound mixer and production assistants to make this happen. We also need to pay for production insurance to cover all of our bases. And we also need to pay for catering as well. If you aren't able to donate, there are other ways to get involved. If you know anybody in the area who would like to be a sponsor or who would be interested in this film, please come talk to me afterwards. Or if you know anyone who would be willing to give us a discount on catering, that will help us astronomically when it comes to the budget. We also are raising money for post-production. The money for post-production will go towards an editor, a sound mix, an original score, which we are super excited about, a color grade, and money to go towards archival licenses and getting us into film festivals. Incentives. So if you donate $20, you will get a social media shout out on The Lost Factory. Go follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you donate $100, you will see your name in the credits. If you donate $250, you will receive exclusive behind-the-scenes content while we are shooting. And if you donate $500, you will be able to attend a virtual screening of The Lost Factory. Perfect. This is just to give you a visual of what we intend the film to look like. We shot this a couple of months ago, and it is on our Seed and Spark page if you want to watch the whole film with audio. If you donate, I think we're at $1,000, you'll get a signed poster from Hugo, me, and our associate producer who is here tonight, Jason Hawk. Stand up, Jason. Yay! And if you're interested in being an executive producer, also come talk to me afterwards, and we're also looking for investors as well. I want to thank you all again so much for being here. I'm very grateful for all of you, and I'm so excited that we are all going to bring The Lost Factory to the big screen. It would not be able to get to the big screen without all of you, so thank you. Please enjoy the hors d'oeuvres. Thank you, John, for bartending tonight. Thank you, CCTV. If you want to say any words to them, this is being streamed live. And thank you again to Burlington Beer Company and Hugo. Yes, enjoy the hors d'oeuvres and cookies in the back. And don't forget to sign up for the 3-month free membership through Vermont Eats.
Don't forget to come see autochrome.
Oh, and see the autochrome. It's amazing.
Hi, my name is Annie Cooper, and I'm standing here in the only autochrome factory in the world, the Lumière Brothers building, here at the Burlington Beer Company. And I came here this evening to hear more about the film, the documentary film that's about to be made, called The Lost Factory Film, with director Riley Allen. Born and raised in Vermont and currently Manhattan-based, Riley has been really intrigued and curious and engaged about this history, the history behind the Lumière Brothers factory, which was presented this evening by Hugo Martínez Cazón. And the Q&A earlier today was with director Riley Allen and Hugo, and it was really enlightening and exciting to learn about what was being done, and we're all here donating to get this film made. And we're so excited to learn about so much history, and that this building right here has so much fabric and tether to some of the most important things that ever happened in film.
Hey, my name is Logan. I'm here at the last standing Lumière Brothers factory in the world, supporting Riley Allen's fundraiser for the Lost Factory documentary that they're going to be filming in October. It's pretty earth-shattering information, so you should donate to make it possible. Go to the Lost Factory Instagram page, check out their Seed and Spark. Yeah, you want to be part of this history. It's incredible.
Yeah, my name is Jackson. Hugo back here has some autochrome and it is absolutely beautiful. It's so dreamy. The pictures are wonderful. I'd love to see more in the future physically if I would be able to. I highly suggest that you donate and that you at least watch the film. Yeah.
My name is Jillian. This is just some one-of-a-kind information, as they've said before. Please, please, please donate to the Seed and Spark campaign for the Lost Factory. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Allen. We just finished up this amazing event to learn about the Lumière Factory, which was here in Burlington, Vermont. It's just a fascinating piece of history that we have here, and we want everybody to know. So if you go to the website, find out more about the Lost Factory, and you can donate, and we can spread this history throughout the world. It was a great event. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Wakowiak. I'm a Vermont resident, and I'm in the old Lumière factory, and I was just here for the fundraising event with Riley Allen and Hugo, and it was absolutely amazing. Riley is a great friend of mine, and we went to college together, and she's just very inspiring, very driven, and I'm really excited to see where this project goes.
Hello, Vermont. This is Riley Parrish Allen. I am the director and the producer of The Lost Factory. I am so excited to be here. This event was amazing. We had a great turnout. We raised some great money for production. And yeah, if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram, The Lost Factory. We are also on Facebook. And I just started a new production company, Northernwood Films. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well to get more updates with the filming. Yeah, follow our behind the scenes content, and we can't wait to film this in October. We will be releasing the film next year, and we can't wait to share this incredible history with the whole entire world and let everyone know that the autochrome process was invented right here in this factory. So, thank you.